Hello, welcome to this video series where I'm going to talk about how I made this Roubo Workbench. Hello and welcome to part 8, which is about the rails for the bench base. This is a Lee Nielsen dowel plate, and I'm making some 10mm drawball pins out of walnut to sort of contrast with the ash of the bench legs. If you're not familiar with the drawball pin technique, it's just really just a dowel which is bashed into a hole through the side of your tenon and your mortise, and it pulls the mortise and tenon joint together. So the hole drilled in the tenon part is slightly offset by about 1mm, so it pulls it in really nicely. And before you go ahead and drill into the dowel plate like this, you need to make a bullet shape on the end of the piece of walnut in this case, just using your block plane as it was earlier, but sharpening it a bit like a pencil so it will lead into the hole. But using this technique, maybe I would have been better cutting these pieces of walnut to much shorter lengths, and in fact I did do that in the end because this wasn't very successful. But this was the only video footage I caught. And the problem with this method is when it's this long, the workpiece, you have to keep stopping and raising the level of the drill bed, so that's a bit difficult because it then you're going into the dowel plate at the same time, and it actually scrapes the grain on the side grain on the piece of walnut here, and actually shaves it, so it makes it a slightly smaller diameter, which is not what you're really looking for. Instead of a drill press, you could just bash them in with a mallet. But all in all, they turned out really well. I chopped them up and made a little pile of them like this. Next, I had to drill some deep holes in the short rails for some screws, some large screws which secure the short rails to the bench tops. Now I'm drilling very long holes into the end grain of the long lower rail, so that a coach bolt can go into the end grain through the side of this leg and meet up with a corresponding hole which is for the barrel nut. And these are knockdown fittings, as I think I explained in an earlier episode. So yeah, this is a noisy one. Here I'm just showing the bolt being pushed through the side of the leg. You can see it projecting out the other side, and that goes into the tenon of the long lower rail. The short upper rail's got a fancy counterbore as well for the bolt heads to sink into, and this was done on the wood rat. Next, to use the table saw to cut slots for the shelf ledgers, and the shelf ledgers are just L-shaped pieces of wood which will be glued into these rails later on, and they're just to support the shelves. then I just use the router plane to clean up the remaining wood between the two slots, which I cut on the table saw to make one wide slot. Here you can see the big hole for the barrel nut that I've drilled. Next up, I had to drill the holes for the drawball pins in the tenons of the short rails, and you can see the offset marks, or you might be able to see the slightly offset marks that I've made with an awl. The marking is done with the tenon in the actual mortise and with a hole that's already drilled through the side of the leg, and that gives you the first mark, which you then offset by about 1 millimetre. Well, that's the rails done, and in the next episode we'll move on to the legs and the preparation of the leg vise. Thanks for watching, and if you like what you see here and you're new to this channel, please subscribe for more updates as they come available. Otherwise you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter or Pinterest, so that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. See you again.